Hey everyone, I'm Tommy Thompson. This is AI in Games Plus. Welcome to Schloss Dagstuhl. I'm out here in a very remote part of Germany as we're about to get ready for our next Dagstuhl Seminar on artificial intelligence for games. Long-time fans of the show will know that I've actually been to this venue a couple of times over the years, and I believe this is either my 5th or 6th, I actually can't recall. Tommy double check and then put it at the bottom of the screen right here. But we're getting ready for 5 days of brainstorming among some of the best minds in academic research in AI for games, but also with a collection of people from across the industry. And as you can see, it takes place here, which you wouldn't really think of as a venue for scientific research, but Dagstuhl is in fact an institution that has existed now for many, many years, where researchers come from all over the world to hold these brainstorming sessions together here at this venue. In fact, as you might have gathered, it's like, what type of building even is this? This is in fact a castle. Something of an old manor home, which is staggering in size, and in fact it was donated many moons ago with the intent of it becoming a home to enable computer science research to continue to flourish in a myriad of forms. And so we're here today. I'm going to be spending the week recording a little bit of what we get up to here at Dagstuhl to try and share a little bit of the insight as to what happens at one of these events, but also just to let you see what an amazing venue this is and what a fantastic opportunity it is to be allowed to come to one of these seminar series. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of coming here several times back in my academic career, but I'm still invited to come along to these, often because I'm one of the academics that got out. I am someone who has, a background in academic research for games, but also nowadays, as you know, I am much more planted in the games industry itself. And so I often have a slightly different perspective on a lot of the topics and ideas that we discuss at this event. So I'm really excited. I don't know what we're going to cover, and we're going to talk about why once we get into the thick of it later on in this video. But let's get started by giving you a little bit of a tour of the grounds and let you get a bit of an insight into what it's actually like to hang out at a venue like Dagstuhl. So yes, back in June of 2024, I spent a week at Schloss Dagstuhl, Leibniz Center for Informatics, which is based near the small town of Wadern in Germany. It's in the southwest of the country and just very close actually to the borders with both Luxembourg and France. Founded in 1990 to provide a retreat for world-class research and training in computer science, it hosts a seminar program in which researchers can pitch to host events at the venue. And so last summer saw seminar 24261 run from June 23rd to 28th, entitled Computational Creativity for Game Development. The seminar, which is the one I'm attending, runs in earnest from the Monday on the 24th right up to the 28th, in which the participants host a series of discussions that can lead to all sorts of shenanigans throughout. But critically, as we'll discuss throughout this vlog, the goal is for it to produce some sort of tangible, meaningful output, ideas that will then flourish within academic research in the coming years, and potentially elsewhere too. And so yeah, here we are, we're at Dagstuhl. I've just unpacked. It was an early flight, had to fly out. Critically, actually, it's because of the location of Dagstuhl, it's actually a little difficult to get to. So a lot of people are actually flying into Germany, to Frankfurt, and then it takes either a rental car, which a couple of hours drive, or they actually take a train for a good hour or two. I think it's at least 2 hours. I can't recall. It's actually been a few years since I've taken the train, and then take a cab from there to Dagstuhl itself. Myself, on the other hand, I actually fly into Luxembourg, and then I take a cab, an expensive cab, which allows me to cross the border from Luxembourg into Germany, because this location is only maybe about 60 kilometers, I think, from the border between the two countries. So it's really difficult to get here. But it's always really nice to be able to come back to this location. So behind me right now, you can see this. We've already shown you the castle area, but this is the annex. This is like the separate library that they built. So the central building you see there, that's actually a library. You're going to see footage of us in there, having conversations, running. Like the start of every day will take place inside that main building. There's a couple of lecture halls in there. And critically, as mentioned, or I don't know if I have mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it now, there is always two seminars happening at once. So there is our AI in Games seminar that's going to be running throughout the week. We are the big seminar, and then there's another smaller event that's also going to be running at the same time. I couldn't tell you right now what that other seminar is. I'd need to go and look. Tommy, remember to put the names of the seminars under here at the bottom of the screen. So it is 12:35 on Sunday. Dagstuhl doesn't start yet, and in fact an awful lot of the footage that you're going to see in this video of the surrounding gardens and also a lot of the facility, just to help paint a picture of what Dagstuhl is like, I'm recording it now before everything kicks off. One of the big reasons for that is that, one, Dagstuhl gets very busy. We spend 5 days having a lot of workshops and, brainstorming sessions and just generally being quite a sociable bunch, and I don't want to be an antisocial weirdo wandering around with a camera all the time. My coffee's slightly overflowing. Didn't quite catch that. So yeah, this is actually our home away from home in many respects. So as you'll see throughout the footage, put down the mug. As you're going to see throughout the footage, we spend a lot of time over in the main library area, in the lecture hall. It's often how we start every day. We discuss or agree what work groups we're going to create, topics we want to discuss, and then people break up and we tend to hang out all over the castle, get together and start actually discussing these things in much more detail. And critically, we also end the day by going back to that hall and trying to summarize what we talked about. It's really important actually that we summarize everything that we discuss. In fact, one of the hard requirements of running a seminar here at Dagstuhl is that we need to actually prepare a report on everything that was discussed, not in 100% granular detail, but a nice summary of everything that we cover as part of this event. And this is for two reasons. One, that these ideas can often then percolate more broadly into academic research and even possibly into the industry in some form or another. In fact, some of the videos that you have seen over the years on the main AI and Games channel is derived from research that started here. In fact, some of the earliest videos I ever made was about the GVG AI competition, the General Video Game AI competition. That was actually originated here at Dagstuhl at the very first AI in Games seminar that was ran here. And in fact, I was one of the researchers who was involved in coming up with that idea. But also, off the top of my head, in the episode on machine learning for Mario level generation, we talked about the work using generative adversarial networks to train Mario level generators. That started here at Dagstuhl. So it's important that we put that together, but also subsequently, Dagstuhl itself as an institution needs to be able to show the value that this work brings. And so naturally, if we have that out there, when academics publish new research papers, they're able to cite the reports that came out of Dagstuhl and saying, this is where this idea came from, and then we fleshed it out into a much larger research project. And even like stuff that could happen in the industry, we can turn around and say, it originated from here. This is where the idea came from. And this is useful to Dagstuhl itself for two reasons. One, because it allows them to continue to highlight their value to the academic community. And of course, we're just one of many seminars that's going to run here this calendar year. But also the other thing is that this place is heavily subsidized by grant money from the German government and from the European Union. And so they have to go back, they go through an annual review as to what is the value of this place? Is it delivering the value that it needs to create to justify its existence? Because let's face it, they are putting us up here in this really nice location, quite a remote location. And as I'll discuss in a moment, that we've taken, they take really good care of us here. And that costs money. And so they have to be able to say, hey, this is the value that this is bringing. It is actually leading to significant growth in the field, and that's why they're doing it. I think I maybe broke the coffee machine. Also, one other thing to talk about is that this area right here, this is our social area. Now, there are two social areas, and typically they are broken up so that each of the respective seminar groups that have arrived at Dagstuhl get their own area. So you might have seen in the footage there when I was panning through the castle a minute ago, you saw the wine cellar. That is the dedicated social area for the other group. Since I have been coming here, this has always been our area, and that's predominantly because we are the bigger group. There is always about 30 odd attendees for the AI in Games seminar every year, or every iteration that we run it. And so we take over this whole space. And so in the evening, we'll try and capture a little bit of footage, but I'm not going to show a huge amount of it. This is where we hang out. We play board games or card games. We occasionally are rapidly prototyping an idea. There will always be a group of people in that corner over there with their laptops out working on something. Some people will just be reconnecting. Bearing in mind that a lot of us are either we work in the industry or we work in academia, but we very rarely get to see each other. And particularly also with the last few years of COVID, that has made it. I think actually a few years ago, we had one of these Dagstools right before the pandemic kicked off, and we genuinely wondered whether it was going to be the last. And in fact, this is the second one since COVID restrictions began to be lifted. And critically, the last one that I attended, we didn't have a huge number of people from North America, because it was still considered at that time unwise to travel across the Atlantic. So this time around, we've not only just we've got a lot of British developers and researchers, we've got folks from across Europe and even farther afield, but also we have a lot of folk over from North America as well. So that's really exciting. So yeah, probably tonight, a bunch of us will be hanging out in here, playing games and critically having a few refreshments.
And so yes, we had a little tipple, but the Monday was when things kick off. Each day revolves very much around feeding times. As mentioned, Dagstuhl is fully staffed and catered, and the meal times are fixed. You get your 3 meals a day, and you make sure the body and mind are suitably fueled for the day ahead. Also, critically, you operate on the staff schedule. You don't get fed whenever you like. You either turn up or you go hungry. Anyway, so as mentioned, when things start each day, we find ourselves in the lecture hall. And we begin on the first day with an overview of the agenda for the session. And everyone briefly introduces themselves. And this brings me to an important point. Who actually goes to this thing? Well, it's a mixture of folks who research games AI, mostly academic, a couple corporate, and then a smattering of actual game developers as well.
And really, the best part about Dagstuhl is it allows for a variety of people from different sectors to come together and have these conversations. So I'm really excited because, one, I'm getting to reconnect with a lot of people from academia that I know. There's also a number of people from industry that are going to be here that I know as well. But also, there's a bunch of people here, or will be here, this is still Sunday afternoon, everyone's still making their way over, who I've never met. And that's the most exciting part, is getting to meet new people, new faces. And those new faces often have new ideas. Don't get me wrong, the rest of us all have new ideas, but sometimes it's fresh perspectives that can allow us to reevaluate things and look at it in a different light. And critically, our community has become increasingly more diverse over the last, 15 to almost 20 years, actually, since the kind of AI for games research community was first founded. And so it's always really exciting to bring in new people who can often look at things in new ways and suggest new ideas, and that stimulates the rest of us old cronies, you know? So yeah, I always think I'm always really honored to be invited to one of these, especially now given that I am not an academic. And critically, that's the thing, you are invited. The organizers curate a list of people that they would like to have at the event. And so every time I receive one of these invitations, I always feel very fortunate to still be considered for this, because it is still probably one of the highlights of my professional career, is able to come to these events and engage with, frankly, a lot of far more interesting and smarter people than I am. But, you know, the coffee's good.
Right, so time to justify all that coffee I'm swilling and the emotions I'm experiencing. Once things have warmed up, the system that we typically have at these events is to propose work groups. Ideas that someone already has and would love to get a group of people together to discuss it. Some people attend with ideas in their mind that they hope to attract like-minded individuals towards. Meanwhile, others will simply emerge organically throughout the week as work groups end, but also conversations just spring up throughout the event. A random conversation over a glass of wine the evening prior can inspire a work group that morning that then lasts 2 days. And so we start each day in the main room as groups are formed or reformed, and end the day by reporting on what we discussed.
Okay, so it's day 2. We did all the work groups yesterday. Everyone goes away, does a bunch of thinking, they write a bunch of stuff down, we then get together, we do a report at the end and summarise the day. So now day 2 kicks off and we're at it all over again, as you can see over there. So some of the groups are going to continue, some of the groups evolve, some groups die and get rebuilt and oh hey, but we finished this thing, but then we create another work group that kind of expands on one part of it. And then also, as you saw, there's so many different topics, we didn't cover them all on the first day. So some of them will then run here on day 2, and some of them are going to be up on that board and be there until day 4. So yeah, we start in the morning, same day, same way pretty much every day, that we have a big Rammy and then decide who's going to go and do what. And I think I'm going to be on the procedural narrative stuff again. I really enjoyed working on that group yesterday. Alright, here we go.
An undercurrent throughout this seminar's work groups and the subsequent conversations was the boom of generative AI, and at its core there was a fundamental issue being addressed across all of them. To quote the executive summary of the event, which was included in the final submitted report to Dagstuhl that was published in December of 2024, despite the sometimes astonishing products of such creative artificial intelligence, the results are usually lacking in meaning. While DALL-E and Midjourney produce images that seem impressive, upon further inspection they contain many mistakes which humans would avoid. While GPT can generate human-sounding text in a conversation, it often produces utter nonsense, and cannot write an original coherent story. And as our own explorations of such techniques during Dagstuhl Seminar 22251 showed, GANs can produce computer game content which looks reasonable at first glance, but is ultimately neither functional nor playable. The goal of Dagstuhl Seminar 24261, Computational Creativity for Game Development, was to investigate to what extent modern artificial intelligence techniques can produce meaningful and functional game content, and what changes to or extensions of these techniques can improve this AI-driven creative process. The actual work groups are fairly broad, and I'd recommend heading over to the final report linked to in the video description, which summarises all of the groups that took place. But just to give you a bit of a taste, here's some of the stuff that I participated in. First up, evaluating the generative space of procedural narrative generators, a conversation that discussed about how do you evaluate a procedural narrative tool. If you're working on a game that adopts procedural narrative, generating storylines as it's playing, ranging from everything like Facade, which we've covered on the main channel, to the likes of Caves of Cud and Dwarf Fortress, all to the, future aspirational ideas of how we can use LLMs, how can you quantify or describe the range of narrative experiences that could emerge within that system, regardless of its underlying technology? This is a fairly meaty topic, given there's a range of possible users for this type of system, from designers to analysts and even players, to also the types of data that you could track and how you would model it. We then had a second session on this a day or so later, Generative Space Analysis for Procedural Narrative Generation, which discussed how to track changes in variables or statistics associated with a play trace of a procedural narrative game, what value this could provide and what meaning could be derived from modelling such a system. Next up, I participated in a group entitled Communal Computational Creativity. This is a nice, big and meaty question that we would never get resolved in the time that we had. Really about how humans can collaborate in using AI in ways that still foster and nurture creativity in areas of education, in company practice and in general art, that are currently being threatened by a surge of often overhyped exploitative AI systems. Lastly, I participated in AI for Romantic Comedies Part 2, a sequel to a workgroup that we ran at the seminar back in 2022, where we discussed the viability of creating romantic comedy games using procedural generation systems. This had been brought back up given we'd spent a couple of days on narrative and tracing the efficacy of those systems, and so returning to this idea once again seemed natural because of its inherent difficulty, and it tied very much into our previous conversations. This time around we broke off into specific subgroups that explored the idea in different ways. I sat with Emily Shorts, Elena Denisova and Mike Cook as we explored challenges in building a very simple prototype narrative game that could afford comedic moments, and really just exploring how horrifically subjective the whole thing is. Now, this is far from an exhaustive list, and again, I'd recommend reading the report, as there was work groups on things like AI for speedrunning games, building AI systems that can discover and communicate valuable skills in strategy games, challenges generative AI could present to the field of user experience research, building ecosystems that would help LLMs learn to write code to play games dynamically, and deliberately designing suboptimal bots in games to help with aspects of user modeling and game testing. So yeah, plenty of food for thought as I flew back, though sadly I didn't get much time to sit and dwell on the talking points of the session as much as I would have liked. I got home for about 5 days and spent much of it finishing writing the talk I then delivered at Develop, but a week or so later. But it was great to read the reports when it came out in December of last year and have it all fresh in my mind once again. A trip to Dagstuhl is always a very rewarding one. With this video, I figured let's give a bit of an insight into what it's like to attend, but without getting too far into the meat of the topic. After all, that's why we produce the report, and I encourage you to go read it. Critically, while you see a lot of the venue and the goings-on, in this video I also actively avoid intruding on the process itself. I mean, I caught some footage of everyone in action, but not what was happening in the moment, and frankly, my sticking the camera in there I felt was intrusion enough. The idea of working in a space like Dagstuhl is being able to engage with these ideas away from the rest of the world, be it the commercial and ethical issues with a lot of broader generative AI products, to just being able to participate in this kind of research discussion without your inbox going off all the time, or other bureaucratic or administrative workloads. Though, sadly, I couldn't quite escape all that, as I still had a couple of meetings throughout the week, but hey, always gotta pay the bills, right? So yeah, I hope you found this interesting to see a little bit of what it's like attending a Dagstuhl seminar. I've left all the relevant information in the video description. Please go and check it out. A huge thank you to everyone for watching this video, and a huge thank you, of course, to everybody else who I was at the seminar with. It was a fantastic experience, and fingers crossed I get to do it all over again sometime.